Good morning, everyone. We're going to start first with the fact that this is our first session live in about 2 years. Plus, we've only got one mic between us, so it feels a bit karaoke style.
We're going to just have to lean in.
Not singers, but bear with us. It's going to be a bit of a double act.
Okay. Right, I guess we should start with kind of who we are. I'm Nat Hazlett. I am a consultant for CPS. It's around the corner. I've had about 15 years experience of Microsoft technologies, the UC stack and associated voice. Nick?
Oh. That would help if I use the mic as well, thanks. Nichola Carty, I'm one of our senior account execs. I've got 20 years worth of IT experience, last 8 years in Microsoft and in UC. So before we start, I think it's important to thank our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be able to be here today.
Absolutely. If you see anything on the board that does take your fancy, do reach out. Most of them are kind of in the expo hall, so say hello.
There we go, double act. It is a true double act, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, this is one of the first in-person Microsoft conferences in the last 2 years. So we feel it's relevant to talk about using Microsoft Teams for voice. So this morning we're going to take you through the technology, the options that you've got to be able to leverage your Microsoft investment.
Okay, so maybe a couple of years ago, organizations have previously said, I don't think Skype is ready to replace my PBX. Certainly Link maybe wasn't, unless you were really willing to kind of put yourself out there. I would say that Teams certainly now is capable of replacing your PBX, your on-prem kit. Microsoft have worked really hard with the millions of users taking on board feedback to make sure that the product is now well and truly fully featured, so that you can absolutely use this now to replace your PBX. It maybe doesn't meet every single requirement, that's fair, but in the vast majority of cases, it will do what you need it to do.
So, why Teams? There's many advantages that we've just highlighted, but we feel that these are the key ones to being able to use voice in Microsoft Teams. So thinking about providing your colleagues with an extension of their productivity at the moment, the fact that they're already using Teams for collaboration and productivity, it makes sense to extend it to voice. Great, feedback as well. And also, it's an evergreen product. You've already invested in Office 365, you're always getting the latest technology, so again, why not use it for voice? And then thinking about it from a management point of view, one product, one thing to be able to manage, less of a headache, get on with the normal day job.
Absolutely. You could then also look at the kind of risk mitigation. In a lot of cases, organizations have slightly older PBXs that have been on-prem for a long number of years, like the likes of the Mitel or the Avaya or the Cisco stuff that you have there. So by removing your dependency on those things and offloading that risk into Microsoft in Office 365, that helps kind of things for you. And from a reduced cost perspective, once you're not paying for the maintenance agreements on those old PBXs and the like, and you can kind of leverage the existing licensing that you're already paying for in 365, then it does look as a really rather attractive proposition from a costing type perspective. Just very briefly on the licensing there, if you have any kind of subscription that has Microsoft Teams within it, chances are that you can just enable the Teams phone system capabilities. If you're on a business type SKU, then there's the Microsoft Business Voice licensing, which I think works out at about $7.50 per user per month. That includes all of the audio conferencing capabilities as well. And if you're on one of the enterprise SKUs, then you can look at using either Microsoft Business Voice for the first 300 users, or just licensing the phone system components specifically, and I think that's about £6 per user per month. So if you look at it from that perspective, adding those telephony capabilities is actually an attractive proposition when you compare it with other hosted UC solutions specifically.
So, if you're thinking about using Microsoft Teams as a phone system, one of the first decisions you need to think about is around Pstn Access. How do you route calls in and outside? Oh yes, it is. So there are two main options of providing calls into Teams. One of them is through Microsoft, and one of them is through direct routing. Direct routing, there's a couple of flavors, but Nat's going to talk you through those.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So the first of your options, I guess, is to use Microsoft call plans. And this is where you effectively use Microsoft as your PSTN carrier. That's great. If you're a smaller business, you want everything in one place. Microsoft basically bill you for minutes and DDIs along with all the rest of your licensing, and it works really well. It's also handy if you are maybe a larger organization, but you have a couple of satellite offices, maybe 1 or 2 people hiding out in Canada or somewhere else in the world. You can just license those individuals using call plans, give them that Pstn Access capability without having to invest in a lot of other infrastructure. Now, because it's done directly with Microsoft, all of your number management and things happens within the Teams admin console as well, so it's a really nice, easy kind of way to look at things. For organizations, though, it's not necessarily cost effective. If you have anything over about 20, 25 users, then there are much better ways of doing Pstn Access within Teams. And also, if you use the Microsoft option, there isn't a huge amount of integration options available, and I'll talk about integration a little bit more in a piece. The next option that you have is Operator Connect. Now, this is where Microsoft have partnered with carriers directly, and basically allow you to use your carrier network without using Microsoft specifically. Now, the nice thing about this is that it allows you to keep those carrier agreements if you already have them. So if you're working closer, don't want that. I can hear myself a lot more. So if you're working with a carrier and you already have an agreement in place, you can basically swing your DDIs and things up into Teams and keep using that agreement. Because these carriers are working really closely with Microsoft as well, they share information about the services that you've purchased, so Microsoft can surface your DDIs and all of that kind of stuff within the Teams admin center for you as well, so number management is a lot easier this way. They're also available in areas where Microsoft don't have call plans themselves. So I think Australia is a really good example there. Microsoft don't have native call plans, but they partner with Telstra to allow you to use one of the larger carriers out that way. This way, of course, though, there are again very limited integration options. Come back to integration in a moment. So moving away from the Microsoft options, we've then got the direct routing capabilities. And there are 2 flavors of this, really. The first is Carrier Direct, and that's where a carrier that perhaps isn't on the Operator Connect path can still connect their SIP trunking directly into Office 365 for you. So it means you don't need SBCs, you don't need any additional equipment, they just connect things in and kind of things work that way. Good side of this, again, if you've already got agreements with a carrier that can do this sort of thing, then you can just connect, swing that up to Teams and away you go. There are often multiple costing methods available as well, so you can either pay per user, or if you prefer, you can look at a per channel model from some of these carriers. And again, per channel really works out an awful lot more cost effective for the larger organizations. Now, because you've gone down the direct routing route, there is some technical knowledge required. So with the Microsoft plans, you literally tick a box and turn it on. With direct routing, there is some config involved. And because you're using the direct routing platform, number assignment is now via PowerShell instead. So you have to be comfortable using those types of administration tool as well as the Office 365 stuff once you start using direct routing. Again, though, with direct routing, the carrier direct, because you don't have an SBC, integrations are a little bit limited. Which brings us to the last way of doing it, which is direct routing, but basically doing it yourself. Now, if you deploy a couple of SBCs, that will then give you the flexibility to do pretty much whatever you want. You can then connect SIP carriers that are not in any way qualified with Microsoft. They connect into your own SBCs, and then you can present that up to Teams. And because you've got those devices, you can then use them to integrate with on-prem kit and things as well. So if you have existing PBXs like those Mitels, the Avayas, the Ciscos, you can then tie that into Teams so that you can call between the 2 platforms using the SBCs. Now, because it's incredibly flexible, you've deployed a bit more technology, it does mean that there's a lot more technical overview that you kind of have to take in. You're still using direct routing, so management of numbers and things is still via PowerShell, so there's a reasonable amount of admin overhead there.
Nat, you keep talking about integration, so what do you mean?
It's a good question. This is ridiculous, isn't it? Swinging a microphone back and forward. So like I said, unless you are a greenfield kind of deployment or a startup with nothing that already exists, chances are you will have some telephony estate that you might want to integrate with. So those on-prem PBXs, so perhaps maybe you're planning a staged migration and you want to have users in both platforms but still be able to call one another, that's where the integration is really important. Similarly, you might have things like paging systems where you used to picking up a telephone, dialing a number and broadcasting across your site. Teams doesn't do it natively, so those integrations are key for that kind of stuff. Door intercom systems or analog devices as well. Microsoft don't have any direct support for analogs, but we can do that with things like these SBCs. I briefly mentioned contact centers, possibly, and call recording solutions. In a lot of cases, those technologies still require you to kind of loop calls out through an SBC to the alternate platform. It's called the Connect model. It's still current and one of the better ways of doing things at the moment. So to be able to use those platforms, you typically need an SBC for that integration.
Ooh, my turn. I'm up. So, how can CPS help? That's what we're here for, right? So we provide a fully managed resilient solution. Low cost of ownership, so scalable per user per month model with true third-party integration that Nat loves talking about so much. As you can tell, it's his favorite topic. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through the technical options that are available using Microsoft Teams as voice platform.
Thanks again, Nick. We must remember to swallow the microphone. So the platform that we offer, I guess, I talked about having those SBCs, and if you need that integration yourself, then there's an upfront cost. But what we provide, if you like, is hosted SBCs in our own platform. We use the Azure data centers, multiple SBCs across different regions to provide you with an entirely resilient platform. Now, if all you want from us is those SBCs, that's grand. We let you bring your own trunk, we integrate with what we have, and we'll pass that through to Teams for you. Simple as. If you don't want to bring your own trunks, or you don't want the hassle of managing your own carriers, then we can lean on our own partners to provide you with DDIs and bundled minutes and things. Now, because we have those SBCs, and part of this service is that we'll allow you to use them as though they were your own, effectively. So perhaps you're planning a phased migration, don't want to invest in the SBCs up front, you can use our platform to tie in your on-prem infrastructure, those phone systems, and then when you do that gradual migration, eventually you're finished with the SBCs, and rather than have the kit that you no longer need, we can just power it down for you. So cost effective in that way. Similarly, if you've got a couple of devices that are perhaps native SIP, can't connect straight to Teams, you don't have on-prem infrastructure, but we can just register those against the SBCs to allow you to call them to and from in Teams. So it's quite useful. I mentioned the contact centers and call recording platforms. Again, we want you to be able to use these SBCs as though they were your own, and we basically let you integrate with anything that you need. So it's fully flexible in that sense. I mentioned as well the overhead of managing it within Office 365. If that's not to your liking, we can provide a kind of wraparound for managing your Teams platform as well, and do all of the day-to-day adds, moves, changes, managing the call queues and auto attendance, and that sort of thing for you.
So as you can see, we can provide some flexibility around anything that's quirky through to the standard. So we can provide it as a SBC, as a service model, all the way through to a fully managed voice solution within your Teams environment. But confident that it's backed with a guaranteed SLA uptime and a UK support team that are on hand to be able to help you. So, okay. You're set on using Teams as a voice solution. Brilliant, we've converted you. You ready to... So, how do you get there? Many of our customers have progressed using voice in the last 18 months and work in this new hybrid world that we're all in now. So, a couple of examples. We've worked with some police forces who are now using Microsoft Teams voice to be able to do daily briefings, through to giving you or I a direct dial number so you can reach the police officer who's managing your case, through to a manufacturing company at the beginning of COVID were loading their cars and vans up with PCs to get people to be able to work from home, to now being able to leverage a global voice solution and remove their Cisco call manager by the end of 2022, and everything's on their cloud strategy. So it's flexible, scalable, and moves at the pace that you do, and thinking about your users. So actually, how can we help you in thinking about what that approach could be for you and your colleagues and your users.
Okay, so we can look at what we would do for a general approach of moving to Teams voice. The first thing would be to understand exactly what it is that you have within your current environment, how your users are using telephony, how you're routing calls, who needs to be able to answer what functionality you're using, and even how you currently connect Pstn Access into your phone system. All of those things are really very important. We understand those so that we can understand where we need to get you to within the Teams platform. The next thing is to definitely engage with your user base. She's going to do that again. We keep doing that. Engage with the people that you're working with. So understand what it is that they need from a telephony platform. Just because this is what you have always done doesn't mean it's necessarily what you should be doing. And if you can provide an improvement to any of your users by switching to this Teams platform, then you get more buy-in, people are more ready to engage with it, and adoption improves at that point. So definitely communication with the people that will use it will help. And finally, it's looking at that migrate phase. How do you get from A to B? We talked very briefly about kind of either doing a full cutover type migration, or perhaps looking at a phased model where, again, using the SBCs to integrate, you can tie in your existing systems and then maybe look at moving groups at a time to make sure that it's well adopted.
And I think one other thing is really thinking about the end users and engaging them on that journey. One of the things that we always stand around is making sure that you consider the adoption and change approach, bringing people along on the journey. One of my customers, they unfortunately had quite a lot of people on furlough, and they came back from having handsets on a desk to 18 months later, there's a PC and a headset. Thankfully, we were there to be able to support them, but it's a huge change for a user to have a PC as their phone rather than a physical handset. So just some examples. So I guess, why CPS? And a bit of feedback. Hybrid working's here to stay. We want to give organisations the flexibility and confidence in communication systems, which enables employees to undertake their day-to-day activities regardless where their locations. So CPS, we're a business consultancy team with a wide range of skills across the full Microsoft stack. We're proud to say that we've got 6 MVPs within our team who live and breathe all this technology. We've got 10 gold competencies, but actually more importantly, we've got 5 advanced specialisms, and those are including calls, meetings, and voice. So we're on stand 3, just around the corner. We're more than happy to continue the conversation. We'd like to thank you for your time. Remind you that there is the charity quiz this evening, so if you haven't signed up for that and you're still here, please do so. Kicks off at 7 o'clock in the ballroom. It is got sponsored drinks as well, and you can sign up through the app. So we are here for the next few minutes as well, so if you've got any questions, happy to talk to you.